Don't want to like test it or something?
I don't think we need to test it. I can look at it. It looks good. See those levels?
Sorry. I was being... Oh.
Shot Jack Daniels, Ethan?
All right. Shot of Jack Daniels. Clink.
In Jack Daniels cups, no doubt.
To whiskey, woman, and nothing else.
The 3 W's. Whiskey, women,
and winning.
Woo!
Ah, felt good.
Part of the appeal of whiskey is that
Don't cough. Don't cough.
no matter how much of it I've had in my life, it's still fucking nasty. Like,
What are you love whiskey? What are you talking
I
about?
love whiskey, but the grossness is part of the appeal.
What are you talking about?
He says as he pours another shot.
Isn't whiskey supposed to be like kind of sweet?
Yeah, whiskey's usually sweet. Bourbon's usually more sweet. Jack Daniels is Tennessee sour mash whiskey distilled and bottled by Jack Daniels Distillery, Lynchburg, Tennessee.
Well, let me tell you a fact I learned about whiskey and bourbon off of the big screen of a super.
Both these shots are for me.
Let me tell you a small fact about whiskey and bourbon that I saw at a Riverman's game on the big screen. All bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon.
That is very true.
Doesn't that just blow your minds?
Not really.
Yeah, I know. It's so simple.
I think, like, I'm still, my favorite whiskey, I'm super partial to Irish whiskey.
Yeah.
For some reason, I like it better. Although, Irish whiskey, I think, is more sweet.
I don't know. I haven't deferred the tastes enough to really tell.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, oh, this stuff makes your chest warm and makes you cough when you drink a lot of it at once. Sometimes I try to fight that. I feel like if you cough while sipping whiskey, it's like you're less of a man, which is totally sexist. Yeah, like you lose, or like people around you just judge you, and that's totally not the case.
So if you take a shot with a woman and you cough and she doesn't, who's the man?
That's the question, isn't it?
Exactly. Man. That's like if the tree falls in the woods.
Yeah, I mean, those are all those like social questions that you just never know about.
I think the man is the person who they take a shot, whether they cough or not. It's the person who reaches for the bottle immediately after.
I feel like the man is the person who will take 5 cups of whiskey and then go out and still get his work done, which is unisex.
Yeah, anyone can be that man.
But in my mind, like, call it old fashioned, but that is kind of like, stepping up, and like taking responsibility.
Functioning alcoholism. Yeah,
I suppose that could be another term for it.
There's something about, man, like you get done working, or like I'll get home from work and you take a shot and then you work on your passion.
Yeah. You know that more than anyone else.
Why you eyeing my
I want to make sure it was recording.
Recorder. Imagine if it wasn't and this was the best.
I was like, no, we took shots off air. No.
We don't drink in private. We just do it on mic. God damn it.
Yeah, every time we take a shot, we have to make sure people are watching.
Exactly. Or listening and imagining what we look like as we flinch. See, the thing with Jack Daniels is, like, it's great to shoot. I would seldom sit back and just, like, sip on a glass of Jack. Like, I would sip on Jameson.
I thought you liked Jack.
I like Jack. I'm not dissing it.
He's a good guy.
Great guy.
Yeah, he found those beans.
He's a godfather to my kids.
He jumped over the candlestick. Come on.
That was Jack Flash.
What? No, Jack jumped over the candlestick.
Jack Flash jumped over the candlestick.
Jack went up the beanstalk. Jack and Jill went up the hill. Jack's all over the fantasy stuff.
Jack and Jill up the hill, Kissing.
What do you...
That's how it goes.
That's not how I remember it.
Well, you were homeschooled.
Yeah, and I heard a lot of these, actually. My absolute favorite one was...
The tears of my mother.
The
anger of my father.
Why you got to bring that up? No, actually, one of my... Jack's a part of it, too. One of my favorites nursery rhymes was The House That Jack Built. My grandma would always come over to our house and read us a big book of it, and it's like, this is the rat that ate the malt... what is it? This is the man that kicked the dog that chased the cat that ate the rat that ate the malt that sat in the house that Jack built, that kind of thing. That stuff is quality.
Never
stuff,
heard of
man.
that. It's kind of like
dude, it's quality.
It's kind of like Lion King, The Circle of Life.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've never heard that. We did do a lot of nursery rhymes in my household, though.
It wasn't really a nursery rhyme. It was like a big book. Like we had a big book of it, and it had all these pictures. And every time you turn a picture, it'd like add like a cow or a guy or a whatever. It was good. It was good.
Wasn't a nursery rhyme. He said as he looked at his hands. He looks up. It was a threat.
I don't remember exactly all of it, but it was like, this is the man that married the woman, that milks the cow, that kicks the dog, that chased the cat, that ate the rat, that ate the malt, that sat in the house that Jack built. Like, that's as far up as I remember, which might be the whole thing.
Oh, really? So it's just like
It
one
might
verse?
be.
It's like one stanza?
No. Like, you add on to it. Like, you go, this is the malt that sat in the house that Jack built. This is the rat that ate the malt that sat in the house that Jack built. This is the cat that ate the rat that ate it. You just keep building onto it.
Holy fuck.
Yeah. There's another book that I loved as a kid. It was about like this, it was a fly went by, where a fly goes by and this kid's like, yo, fly, why are you walking? Where are you going away? And the fly's like, I got to get away from that frog. And the kid's like, yo, frog, why are you chasing that fly? Shame on you. And the frog's like, no, I don't care about the fly. I'm trying to get away from that cat. And the kid's like, yo, cat, why are you chasing the frog? And the frog's, and the cat's like, yo, I'm just trying to get away from that dog. And it just keeps building up and up and up and up. And it's, gosh, I love those stories. Those are such good ones.
That's kind of just an excuse when you don't want to admit that you're hungry. Like, that's being like, I think I'm being followed. I better pull into McDonald's and get some fries.
Dude, I know we just had pizza, but I was really thinking about picking up like French fries on the way over here. I was that hungry.
I would almost be tempted to run to McDonald's just for a Coke. Their Coke's great.
Do you not have Coke here?
I know I don't.
Homeless.
Not the drink, anyway.
We all know that if you're American, you always have Coke at your house.
You know what? I was a Pepsi guy up until recently.
You sick freaking face.
I'm back on the Coke wagon. But yeah, McDonald's Coke is better than other Coke.
Yeah, there's definitely restaurants that have better soda.
I don't know why.
Like when I go to Chili's and I order Sprite, I'll drink that stuff up like
They got good
mad.
Sprite?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what makes it better some places than others.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, it doesn't.
What was some of your favorite like storybooks or nursery rhymes when you were a kid? I already talked about two of mine.
So the problem with me is that when I'm like engaging in entertainment, I seldom retain most of it, except for if I'm
goes in one ear out the other.
So like when I was a kid, I was huge on Where the Wild Things Are, the book.
Really? I've never got into that.
I couldn't tell you anything about it today, though. I have no idea. There's another book.
It was like all about a rumpus day, wasn't it?
You might know better than me, and you've never read it.
Except in college, it's called a humpus day.
Oh shit!
That's
Wednesday.
Stupid. Don't laugh at that.
Yeah, Where the Wild Things Are, I loved. There's something that's like, I think it was called Florence Nightingale.
Yeah.
You recall that?
Yeah.
I don't know anything else about it, but I fucking love the shit out of it.
I don't remember it either, actually.
Oh, and there's this book. I remember this book. It was Pierre. And all he does is like, people can do whatever they want to him. He's like, I don't care. His mom backhands him. He's like, bitch, I don't care. And no matter what happens, he doesn't care until a lion comes up and is like, I'll eat you, you little son of a bitch. And he's like, I don't care. And the lion eats him. The doctor comes. He fucking pumps the lion's stomach. Pierre pops out. He's like, I cared.
That's awesome.
It's like 10 pages. But yeah, that's the gist of it. Yeah.
I feel like there's some symbolic meaning behind that about how you cannot care about anything until it happens to you. And then all of a sudden it's the most important thing ever. And then you just seem like a crass bastard up to that point. But I feel like that's digging too deep.
It's kind of like white guys who are like, nothing offends me until the slightest thing happens.
Exactly.
And then they care a lot. I think that's actually what the story's about.
Exactly. It's like, oh, they have a war over there? Pff, whatever. And then Pearl Harbor happens. They're like, oh, I care now.
Exactly.
You know, it's like, you know, we could have gotten here a lot faster.
Or a white guy hears a racial slur and he's like, I don't know why people are bitching. It didn't bother me. I'm fine. Yeah. Take a note out of my book, people.
The
Teflon.
Another one of my favorite stories was about like these 5 brothers who all had like supernatural abilities. Like one could like drink a bunch of water and his face would get really big, and one had like eyes in the back of his head or something like that. And so this king was like sentenced one of them to death. And he'd always be like, yeah, can I go say goodbye to my mom before you kill me? And then he'd be like, yeah, okay, fine. And then he'd leave and he'd switch out with one of his brothers. Like, he's like, I'm going to kill you, but I'm going to kill you by sending you into this forest where you'll be lost forever. So he was like, I want to say goodbye to my mom. And he was like, okay, yeah, go say goodbye to your mom. And he'd leave and switch out with his brother because they're all twins.
So they
Like
were like,
quadruplets. And then his brother with like the eyes in the back of his head would go into the woods, but he wouldn't get lost because he had eyes in the back of his head. So he went, and so he'd be all like, oh no. And then like he told him to like go get thrown into the river, but the guy who could drink a lot like drank the whole river, and they're all like, oh snap. And then he like switch out with another one. That was awesome because it was like superpowers for me and stuff like that. But
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, those superpowers are so mundane. It reminds me
Yeah.
of when I first saw Hunger Games. I saw Hunger Games before I read the books. And like everybody has these great things. Like Katniss is a sharpshooter with bows. Look at these people; they do makeup so well. They can blend in with trees and all that.
Don't get me started on Hunger Games.
Well, but then it's like, what does Peeta do? He's like, I pick things up. You know, like he's a strong guy.
Strong somehow.
But he's not super strong. He's just strong from picking up bread and throwing it in the oven.
Yeah.
And occasionally chucking it at homeless
Yeah.
kids. The burnt bread, and then he gets beat for it. Beat with a rolling pin, no doubt.
Shoot. There's this Vine. I don't think you've seen it, but it's like
Don't tell me what I've seen.
It was this lady, and she's like, this little girl like looks around the corner, and she's like, Katniss, and then this like other woman's like, yes, come here, baby Rue, come here, and then like the little kid like walks up to her and shanks her, and she's like, oh, that bitch stabbed me. It was really, really funny. Oh man, I would love to watch a whole version of that.
You know what's crazy is I saw Hunger Games 1. I'm a passive fan of Hunger Games at this point, but I saw the first Hunger Games, and I saw Jennifer Lawrence in it. I was like, fucking never seeing her again in a movie. She sucks.
Wow.
And now I'm a relative Jennifer Lawrence fan. I think she's great.
You were super wrong.
I was the wrongest I've ever been, dude. But everything else I've ever seen her in, I'm always like,
Yeah.
girl does good.
Yeah, everything else I've said, I'm right.
Everything. Remember when I said I was wrong? I was right about that.
Jennifer Lawrence is a good actor. I will say I'm not a fan of Hunger Games. The
second one's great.
It's most of like, I feel like the characters are inconsistent. I feel like a lot of the drama is forced into the story, and I feel like everyone else makes it out to be something that I don't think it is. Like everyone talks about how great of a character Katniss is, and I see what they praise her for, and I'm like, that makes her a really bad character. Now, or a bad hero, I should say.
She's a fairly humanized, dynamic character.
I suppose. It also bugged me in the third installment about how the entire war was based on propaganda. And I'm not saying that that's not a big part of it, but it just felt like if Katniss was happy, they succeeded. And if she was sad or questioning what was going on, they failed. And it was just like, that's very cut and dry. Like, come on.
Yeah.
It's like there's a lot more to it than just that.
I don't want to pretend like Hunger Games is something more deep than it is, but there's a lot of cultural commentary
sure.
there. There's what's interesting about Hunger Games is the villain. No one can quite agree on what the what is it called, the Capitol people?
Yeah.
So, like, if I talk to a conservative person, they're always like, the Capitol represents big government.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but if I talk to a liberal person, they're like, they're the 1%, you know? Like, and the author was so, it seems cautious not to indicate who it was so that she could reach the lowest common denominator, which was just people who were pissed off at other people.
It did cause sort of like this weird, and you're right, it's like, it no matter who you talk to, it was always that person in power, and it always kind of deferred based off of who you think is in power.
Yeah.
Which probably says a lot about who people demonize, because both sides are kind of demonized.
Yeah.
You know, they're demonizing different things, but they both demonize. But what was I think one of the most interesting phenomena that followed Hunger Games, excuse me, was
Whiskey
that
creeping back
as
up.
soon as it was done, everyone wanted to be part of like a revolution. They wanted to stand up against something. And it may not have been Hunger Games entirely, but I've always felt like after Hunger Games happened, everyone was like, we have to stand up against like anything really. Like there was something happening and we had to stop it, or we had to stand up for it, or we had to protest or something like that. Everyone wanted to revolt against something. And I feel like everything they were kind of revolting against wasn't really there.
Well, I think
that might have been just been me, though.
I think for a cultural phenomenon to take off, which is a rare thing, it has to speak to a truth that the culture already has, but they haven't fully spoken it yet. It's like a secret everybody has. And then that thing comes out, and it could be Hunger Games, it could be anything. And then all of a sudden that becomes the guidebook for how we're going to conduct business for a little while. And like it makes for a very special moment if you're directly involved in it, but then otherwise it could seem pretty silly. And I'm all for standing up and causing a stir, but especially now, and I won't blame Hunger Games for this, but people are willing to take a position and fight to the death for it just to say that they believed in something without critically analyzing it. And then when they do critically analyzing it with air quotes, they're like, it's more about they just read talking points and they rehash them. And like you can always find
adding to the pile that's already there.
Exactly. And then you have a bunch of people repeating what maybe 5 different people have ever said.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I've been running into that a lot where it's like people will say something, I'm like, that's exactly what this person said 100 years. Huh. Yeah. No, I don't remember exactly. I think it might have been DashCon. Yeah. Where it was like a Tumblr convention that just went horribly, horribly wrong. This happened like 5 or so years ago. It's hilarious to read up upon.
Real fast, though.
It was just garbage.
Tumblr, I'm mostly uninitiated. It's just like standalone blogs for people, right?
Kind of, yeah. So a lot of people rant on it.
Are there Tumblr celebrities?
I think so.
So people, that's the idea.
You can like follow people.
That's the idea of the convention, is you can meet your favorite faceless person.
I don't remember exactly. I think they had like bands showing up and content creators showing up to do like panels. It was a convention.
Yeah.
You know? And nobody showed up. Like it was basically this giant scam, and it was horrible. I'll send you a video about it. No. It's hilarious. It's really funny to read up on just because it was just garbage. Anyways, I do because they didn't have enough money to keep renting out the space. So they basically asked everyone who already bought tickets to donate money, and they donated like $1,000 or $2 like from the hall that they were all standing in. And I think that there is a shot of them all singing Do You Hear the People Sing from Les Mis, which is super cheesy. Yeah. And I think they were all holding up the 3-finger Girl Scout salute from Hunger Games as well. And that's what I mean. Is like people just kind of like want to stand with people kind of like against something, or just together just to be like involved with something bigger than them or something like that. It's really kind of just strange.
This might be an outcome from like a generation of people. Like if you think about it, dude, me and you have read more books, seen more movies. We've been told and understand stories probably more than our parents have been exposed to, and we're in most cases half their ages, but we've just been so like inundated with that. So like I feel like people nowadays, they think that a mutual enemy is the only way that you can make friends, when really you don't even need enemies. You can just kind of make friends with everybody, even if you don't agree on things.
Well, it's interesting because my dad will bring this up sometimes too, where he'll be like, when he was a kid, there was wars going on. Like he lived through the Vietnam War and other stuff. And my grandparents lived through World War I, World War II, and Korea and Vietnam. And it's like as soon as our generation started, the millennials, it's like all of a sudden all the conflict in the world there hasn't been a major conflict outside of like maybe Iraq, but Iraq was very much like you weren't involved with it. You just hear about it in the news a lot. And so there hasn't been like that one like unifying conflict to unite people from our generation on as much as it was before. But whether or not that's actually part of the cause for everyone wanting to unite against something and not being able to find something, I don't know if that's necessarily the case, because there's a lot of stuff that's still out there. And we still know a lot more about it too than anyone ever did back in the day. But
I've seen that talking point before, and like how the war in Iraq.
It's probably not a new idea.
Well, it lasted longer than most wars, but like we didn't, as citizens, we didn't feel like a country at war.
Yeah,
you know, it was something that was so compartmentalized that like, you know, people, it wasn't at the forefront of people's minds who didn't have family over there. So like there's that aspect, but at the same time though, like the people nowadays are finding things to rail against, and it's kind of more similar to the baby boomers of the civil rights movement. Is now we're kind of fighting for the politically correct movement,
kind of, yeah,
which is an infinitely noble thing, although it definitely gets overboard at times. I think honestly, I think the reason that Trump won, I think it was all because of liberals, and I'm a liberal. But like for so long, they were telling everybody to shut up and that like you're an asshole or you're racist, and they just screamed at people until they were quiet, and then the people were harboring feelings of resentment, and then Trump showed up and he was talking loud and he was saying what they were all thinking. So they're like, I've never voted before, but I'm gonna go vote for this guy. So like, I think a lot of people are fighting for causes and shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, I think shoot, you just said a lot. You just covered so much ground. I don't know what to say. Because
I don't even remember what I said.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time too. Because I think I do have some. I think I agree with a lot of what you said. But I need to like unpack it all. My brain's not working fast enough.
There's a lot.
But I mean, it's like I think the biggest issue with the Iraq War was that it wasn't the enemy of that war. The war with quotations would be that it was kind of vague over what exactly we were fighting against. Because it wasn't like we were going up against a specific country or a certain section of the country. Like the last big conflict I can think of is Vietnam, and that was the North Vietnamese. Those were the enemies, more or less. And the way Bush described it in Iraq was that it's a war on terror, more specifically in the Middle Eastern, because that's where a lot of the people were. But it wasn't exactly like against Iraq, or it wasn't against Iran or anything like that. But it was within like specific groups of people within those areas. And it was just kind of like, who are we fighting? Where are they? What's going on? I think there's a lot of confusion.
It's a faceless foe. And what's interesting is me and you both lived through the Iraq war, and I wouldn't put it in quotation marks, but how probably uneducated we actually are on it. It wasn't in our faces. You brought up the war on terror, which is funny. I got to talk about this. So I got this record called Death Dream that we're about to record, and the first song it's called Eulogy, and it's about my whole life up to the point.
Wow.
The idea of
all
death,
26 years.
The idea of Death Dream is that I was inebriated, and I was so inebriated the next day I thought that I had died, and I thought that I had been dead for like a month. Like I was like, that's the day I think I died that day.
The day the music died.
My music, at least. But actually, it spawned a record. But the first track, Eulogy, I'm running through everything, talk about 9/11 and what it meant to me, and that as presumptuous as that is. But I say we're scared of terrorists abroad. We left the domestic ones alone, and they were in their basements building bombs and blowing up our homes. And
that's a good lyric. You should put that in a song.
You know what? I think I just might.
Wow.
Yeah, and be out by February.
Happy birthday.
Or you can to you as well, because that's your gift.
Rock on, man.
Yeah. So
I mean, I feel like I was a little bit too young to remember all that, but I understood it was important.
What?
And I understood it was scary. So that's why I didn't really pay attention.
What were you doing?
I don't remember.
Really?
I think I was like, I remember that day, but I don't remember what I was doing. All I really remember was like I was off doing my own thing, and my sister, who is 6 years older than me, was it 2011? 2001. Sorry, 2001. I added a 1. 2001. That's right. That's what I was thinking of. That's not what I said. Yeah, 2001. So I was like 8 years old by that point. Not really cognitive enough to really understand world economics and political stuff. I just remember my sister watching the TV and being like, "Oh my God, the second one went down," and I was like, "Oh, okay, this is scary."
Yeah.
And that's really all I kind of remember. I kind of stopped paying attention. Like I remember my mom and dad listening to this scary stuff on the radio while we were going to like St. Louis, and just trying to tune it out as best I could, because I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. This is scary stuff.
I was 9 and I was at home.
Yeah.
And my dad called and he was like, "Turn on the TV." And my mom was like, "What channel?" He's like, "It doesn't matter." You know? And it did not matter, because every channel he got on, it was the same thing. But I'm ashamed to admit this, but I'll give myself a pass because I was 9 years old. Yeah. But I was like, we're not going to have to do school today. We were homeschooled.
Well, see, yeah, that's kind of the thing, is like you and I were at that age where like I don't think my brain kicked in until I was like 14. Well, and I started to realize like, oh, like things just started making sense. Social interactions made sense. Political stuff made sense. All this stuff just started making sense that didn't make sense before.
Well, and also, like, you know, being a kid from Illinois, like, when I was watching that, and it's in New York City, my reference point for New York City and the most practical application I could muster was X-Men 1.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Fighting on the Statue of Liberty.
And that's exactly right. Like, we didn't know what the World Trade Center was up to this point. We don't even know where New York was at that point.
It's just a building, and it was on TV, and everything on TV is fake.
My biggest concern at that point was, when does my starter Pokemon evolve?
Come on.
And to a certain degree, it still is.
Come on, Blastoise, Jesus. But yeah.
Level 36.
And then
Blastoise rules.
There was a bunch of talk at church, and they were like, what is it in Chicago, Sears Tower?
Yeah.
Everybody was like, oh, Sears Tower is going to be next. I was thinking, to me, that was as foreign as if they're like, the Great Pyramids in Egypt are next, you know? Like,
yeah.
Even though I wasn't too far from Chicago, but
it's just weird because,
it wasn't real life.
Like, as a kid, like, you recognize the significance, but like you're still like on autopilot.
Yeah.
Where you just have like joy at that point. You don't have to worry about worldly things at that point, because you're like, you know what? I like these colors, and you're just over there painting the walls.
Yeah.
It's like it's just a bizarre like reaction, because nowadays it's like, oh, what are we going to do about this? Well, as a kid, it's like, well, I can't do anything, so I'm going to go play with, Buzz Lightyear and Woody.
Yeah. Well, it's something I've been bringing this point up a lot lately, is that everything is normal to children.
Yeah.
At work, a lot of times I'll ask a family, I'll say, like, do you have any plan to discuss adoption with this child? And they'll say something like, oh, too young to understand. I'll be
crap.
I'll be like, well, you're right. I go, but how does he understand birth?
Right.
He doesn't understand birth. Because when you're a kid, you're told something that's normal. So, like, the sooner you start a conversation like adoption with somebody, it becomes normal. Because when you're a kid, you're like, well, that's just how things are, And, like, that's, a benefit in that regard. But then on the flip side, you witness a travesty. Something I'll always remember from that is the moment it became real to me when I saw that clip of a guy who chose that he would rather jump out the window than be crushed or burned to death or what have you. And that was when all of a sudden it still seemed as fake as ever to me because it was on TV. But at the same time, I could empathize with that guy making the decision. Even as a 9-year-old, I could empathize with, like, man, I'd rather jump out than,
take control of your last moment.
Yeah, than die this other death.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty deep stuff for a 9-year-old to be thinking about. But it's something, like you said, though, like your point, they do think that stuff.
Oh yeah, well, and part of egomania that I have is that I can only understand other people by pretending it's me.
Well, I think that's called putting yourself in their shoes. That's called empathy.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it.
You do bring up a good point, though. Kids are a lot smarter than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
Like, they may not get the whole thing, but they do have thoughts about stuff that we don't think that they do. I remember this one story, one of my teachers told me at ISU. He said that he wrote a story about divorce and about how this kid was going through it. And it was like a kid production of it was a play. And afterwards, he was having a Q&A session with, like, the audience, who was, like, a lot of kids and parents. And this little boy or girl, I don't remember, they raised their hands and they were like, yeah, I totally related to, like, the main character, because they thought it was their problem. It was their fault that their mom and dad broke up, when in reality it wasn't. And I always thought that, but now I realize it's not my fault. And all of a sudden I feel like very much relieved about it. It was like an 8 or so year old, I think. And then the parent who was with them was like, I had no idea they thought that.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that they just were okay with it. Like, oh my God. And it's just one of those things where it's like, if you don't explain things to kids, if you don't treat them like minds, like cognitive, reasonable things, then they're just going to grow up and they're just going to have a lot of this untapped, unpent emotion and thoughts that they think are either wrong or they're scared to share them or something like that. It's like, just talk to your kids.
It's kind of like quasi Occam's razor for children
Kind of.
because like when you're a kid, you're the center of your universe. You're the only thing you can fully count on, and then kind of orbiting you is your parents, but they're not there all the time, you know. So like you have to understand everything by filtering it through yourself, you know, and then you have that heightened level of it's a lack of self-awareness.
Sure.
But I don't know. In a lot of regards, I think a lack of self-awareness is good.
I think people can learn a lot about things by describing it to kids.
Yeah.
Like it's amazing what you'll discover if you try to explain something to your kid. One thing, they'll learn about it and they'll probably grow from it and they'll probably learn to deal with it. But at the same time, it's like if you try to describe all of the world's conflict to a child, then all of a sudden you'll probably end up finding things of like, is it really that simple? You know what? Probably. But not to say it is a simple thing. But I mean, if you do like what you said, Occam razor, and cut away a lot of the complications, sometimes things are simpler than we make them out to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes the best way to find that is to describe it in layman's terms to a child.
Have you seen that subreddit? It's called "Explain to Me Like I'm 5" or something like that, or "Explain Like I'm 5."
Dude, I'm totally gonna scroll through that tonight if I remember.
Oh, dude, it's great. I think that's what it's called. And basically, a lot of people they default by like trying to describe their job to a 5-year-old.
Oh yeah. There's something like that where it's like bad stock photos of your job, and it's like DNA scientists holding DNA. It's ridiculous.
I always wonder, how do stock photos get made?
I don't
like,
know.
who's like, we're going to take this picture and
It's like
somebody's going to use
just stand
it.
there in a lab coat. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Put the watermark on it.
It's probably like when the IT crowd's doing their sexy calendar with all the nerds.
Anyways, what was your point about the Reddit page? Explain it like a 5-year-old.
Oh, I just brought it up because you were talking about if you could maybe you can gain perspective by explaining something to a child.
Yeah.
Which I mean, in a lot of
stand by.
ways, yeah, like that's when you simplify and you get rid of all the the bullshit politics of it, and then anything, because like we're really good at making life more difficult than it needs to be.
For sure.
Yeah.
There's something I've been kind of running with the idea of recently, where it's like, if people were more open about things, like in kids shows, I feel like everything would be a little bit more clear. Like in kids shows, they'll be like, you'll have like someone laughing behind the person's back, be like, look at him, look how stupid he is, and all the other characters be like, listen, you wouldn't like it if he said that about you. Why don't you stop doing that? He's like, you're right, I shouldn't do that. And then like he apologized, and he was like, good job, man. It looks like you're having lots of fun, you know. And then like, what was my point? My point is that it's like, if we're embarrassed by something, I feel like people should be more open to say, I'm embarrassed about that. And then everyone would probably be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. I thought we were just having fun.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, we admit like, oh, that scares me. Then it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'll try to be more sensitive about that. You know, it's like we kind of try to hide that stuff. Like if someone's like teasing, he's like, he's wearing a pink shirt. And he's like, yeah, I'm wearing a pink shirt. It's like he might mean that, or he might just be trying to hide from the fact that, he's actually not really that comfortable with it. And I think it might be better if we're all just a little bit more open about that stuff.
I mean, I think that honesty is key to everything. Like, I think the truth will set you free.
Sure.
But though, like, it takes compassionate ears to hear the truth. And again, that goes back to my Trump point. The reason that I feel that he won was that there's no compassionate ears. And it's very difficult to have compassionate ears when someone's spewing something as ignorant as racism. But at the same time, like, this comes from a white guy, but to me, it's got to be a teachable moment.
Right.
Like, you got to try, instead of silencing that person as much as it would be nice, you got to try and you got to change them. Because like a good conversation is two people come together and they have a discussion and they walk away as different people.
Yeah.
Even if it's a minute change, because minute changes grow. So like, we just need more open communication, I think.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think you're absolutely right, where it's like, by trying to include a certain type of person, you're excluding everyone who's not that specific type of person.
Yeah.
So, and when you feel like you're not having your voice heard, no matter who you are, you get hurt feelings and you start to lash out after it's been bottled up for so long.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people feel that way. They feel like they've been hurt or they feel like they've been ignored, and it's caused a lot of harm and concern for a lot of people.
Something I want to bring up, we can cut this out if you want,
Uh,
but there's,
it depends.
I won't use too many identifying details, but you had talked about how you felt like in a certain area with a certain person you couldn't talk about politics, you couldn't open up about politics.
Politics or religion or...
Well, you kept bringing it up, but I said to you, I was like, but you're not very much a political person. The only reason politics seems so big to you is because you feel you're being silenced. And when you're told you can't talk about something, and we've learned this as children, when you're told that you can't go do something, what do? You go do it.
Right.
And all of a sudden, it becomes all you can focus on. So, like, but by you feeling like you can't open up about your politics, all of a sudden politics seems like a bigger thing in your life than it actually is.
Absolutely. And a lot of this, it's like, I've always suffered with that idea of how it's like, if I say something, someone's going to take offense to it because I feel like it's even though it may not be like the least popular opinion, it's like definitely not the majority, or at least whatever room I'm in. Yeah. Like, for example, I'm in theater a lot, and theater people have a tendency to lean towards more political views than other political views. And if you go against that at all, then all of a sudden you feel like you can't express that without running into a wall of either hostility or opposition, essentially. Yeah. So you don't really want to even face that at all. So you just end up just not talking or keeping your mouth closed. And unfortunately, it does, like you said, it does make you feel like it's a bigger deal than it actually is.
Exactly.
Like, expressing your ideas and expressing your feelings about something or your beliefs about something should never feel like a challenge. You should be totally open for that stuff. You should be willing to share that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think most people are willing to listen, but I do think some people are very defensive. And this is why I still struggle with it. Because I do feel like some people, if you say the wrong thing to them, they will get on to you. And I've seen it firsthand. And it's funny, but it's sketchy at the same time.
Well, and like, I mean, I don't want to out you, but you're right-leaning. So like, but you're also not a...
How dare you?
You're not
my secrets.
Now everyone will know. Even though my Facebook profile indicates it.
Yeah, if you dig deep enough, there's probably some stuff where I'm like, I said that? Oh, I probably should have said that.
The thing is, though, so you're right-leaning, but you're not a very political person. So...
That you know of.
You say something, and then all of a sudden this guy who's left-leaning, who's also not a political person, but he studied up on the talking points and he can recite them, he can blast you like a low-hanging fruit, and you can't defend yourself. So I understand, like, not wanting to open up, but it is better, as cliche as it is, it's better to be hated for who you are than to be loved for as someone you're not.
Oh, absolutely.
But then also, like, sometimes you share your opinion, and you're right, and you get a lashing for it, and you got to take that. Other times you share your opinion, and you're wrong, and you take a lashing from it, and you grow. You actually grow either way.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting because it's like... Truth is an objective thing, and I try to say this a lot, but I've never been able to really say it right, so let's see if I can do it tonight. Truth is an objective thing. It's like gravity exists. That's either true or it's not, and the evidence is that it's true, so it's true. But, gosh dang it, again, I'm not saying this right, but it's like, it's one of those things where I feel like the biggest political thing that's always been the big issue is whether or not government should be bigger or smaller. And if you have two people saying that it should be bigger, if you have another person saying that it should be smaller, there's like neither of them can really be right. Well, one of them's got to be right, and the other one's got to be wrong. So I lost track of what I was trying to say.
I got a couple points to make about it. So
okay, go for it.
Ultimately in life, if we look at things as like there's one truth, and it's objective. The problem is we're bad at identifying it, because for the longest time the earth was the center of the universe, and then Galileo was like, I don't think so, and they're like, okay, you're on house arrest. Now he was objectively correct. The thing with government, though, I would say there's an objective truth that maybe more government's better, and there's an objective truth that less government's better, but it's situational based on the time. Right. It's not a consistent truth.
It depends on how big the size of
drastic
the
government
is.
Well, drastic times, drastic measures. And there's all these changes. If times are good, you don't need as much government. If times get really bad, you probably need more government. both of those things can be equally true.
Right.
It's situational.
Right, and you're absolutely right. Back before we had our, back before we had our Constitution, and it was just the Federalist Papers. Back then, there wasn't enough government, and it was basically just anarchy, and the states were run amok, and there was no organization to it. So that was definitely a situation where we needed more government.
Yeah.
Now, and it's always kind of been the big question: is like, how far should it overstep its boundaries? And you're right; it does depend on what the government's doing, what's this happening. But what my main point was that if you have two sides of an argument, I think, I won't say for every single case, but for the most part, like 99%, one side is right or more right than the other side usually.
With respect to time.
Yeah, with respect to time,
Yes.
and with respect to the situation, the evidence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like with the Galileo example, like Galileo was right, and everyone else was wrong.
Yeah.
That's just how it was. And it's hard because sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes you're like, well, they both make really good cases, and I'm not sure. And that's okay thing to say. But there are a lot of situations where it's like, I think I'm right. You think you're right. How are we going to talk about this? How are we going to communicate this without getting mad at each other for thinking the other one's wrong? And that's a hard thing to negotiate or work around these days because everyone's very defensive.
Well, and I think your objective truth is limited to like the universe and the earth and science. There's objective truths that we have, and we might be wrong about some of the things that we think are the truth.
Right.
People across time are always wrong. But then, though, I think when you get society involved, there's no objective truth because society isn't necessarily a natural occurrence. This is something that somebody made up.
Right.
And then a lot of people made it up, and then a lot of people agreed on it. So, like, what we have, though, is like we've taken the objective truth and we've cut out certain pieces of it, and we've made a subjective quilt. And I think that's why we can't get along.
See, I don't know, because there's a lot of societies that follow sort of like the same example, and I'm not completely disagreeing with you. I do think there are a lot of gray areas.
You asshole.
I think there are a lot of gray areas within society. Or at least stuff that we don't know enough about to really be sure who is right and who isn't right. Like with Galileo, it's like with more evidence, with more technology, and with more science, we figured out the truth, Yeah. And maybe that's going to be the case with society later on, but right now we just don't know. But I do think that there's enough consistencies between societies that we can kind of figure it out. Though I don't think it's going to be black and white. Like that's one of those situations where I do think there's going to be like the type of middle ground.
I think it's one of those.
But it also depends what we're talking about within a society.
Well, I think it's all of society. I don't think it's which one's the correct answers. It's a question of which one is the most correct answer.
Yeah.
With respect to time.
Yeah, there's a big thing in theater where it's like there's no wrong answers. There's strong and weak answers. So like, that's one answer. And it is an answer, but it's not as good as this one. And so you're always trying to find that, like...
That's objectively a stupid thing to say.
Yeah.
There are no wrong answers. There's just weak answers.
Yeah. Well, in the arts, it's very true because it's like that like, we just talked about the Blair Witch Project, where it's like, they didn't do it wrong per se, but it wasn't as strong as it possibly could have. In many different ways, and who knows, maybe what we say is wrong, and it is the strongest way to do it. Of course, that doesn't always apply to everything in life, but I will say you'll find it more in life if you're looking for it than if you're not, or if you're aware of it, I should say. I think it's time for another shot.
I think so too.
All right, bottoms up, Jack in the pot.
Uh-oh. We got a woman at the table.
More like two women.
I didn't cough.
You didn't cough, but you made a sound.
My eye is actually watering right now.
Ha! You female. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
I think that...
If anything, it makes you better.
I think on a sliding scale, with masculine on one side and feminine on the other side, I think I am leaning more on the feminine side.
What are you talking about?
Well, there's very masculine dudes.
Sure.
You're alpha males.
Sure.
I'm not that guy.
Sure. Yeah, I've always kind of questioned that about myself too, because everyone talks about like alpha and beta males, And I've always been like, I'm not exactly an alpha, but I'm not a beta either. I don't understand.
I can answer this for you, actually. You went to theater school.
Yeah, but I'm like the least theater kid out there. I am a living anomaly.
I think it's funny that like the idea of like we use females as like a negative thing, like you're sissy and stuff, or like, oh, he's a girly man.
Yeah.
But most of the assholes I've met in life have been dudes. I don't think being a dude's anything to brag about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like girls can be assholes too. I just feel like they're different assholes.
Well, yeah. But when we think about the virtues of being a man, it's like tough, emotionally strong, cut off from, like it's really not great things that we're talking about.
Well, it depends though, because we also describe being a man as taking responsibility and being willing to take blame and stand up against opposition.
Yeah, which
I feel like is granted, but at the same time, that's not universally man,
No, it's not. It's see, and like, I don't want to get social justicey, but yeah, we should be arguing more about what it means to be a human and showing humanity and empathy and being accountable. Like, but there are also some times where like. Sometimes to get myself through a difficult situation, I'll be like, be a fucking man.
Yeah.
Be accountable. Now, apologize.
Now, mind you, that probably just works for you. I definitely know that whenever someone's like if I use P90X sometimes, and there's a part where he's like doing a workout, you're like 40 minutes in, and you're tired, he's tired, and he goes, do it. Just man up and get it done. And like that motivates me more than anything else this like super positive guy says to me throughout the entire series of P90X. And that's probably because I am a man.
Probably, though, the measuring stick we should be using isn't be a man, power through. It should be like, be an old lady at a hot yoga class. Yeah. Those women are insane, dude. I did a yoga thing off YouTube in an air-conditioned room, and I died.
Yeah.
And these women do it in hot rooms for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And they're 60.
It's just it's weird because like when you say man up, that means like step up to the challenge and face it head on, and that's what you're saying. But that's two of those are two different things. One of them is looking at a specific gender, while the other one's like anyone can hear that and be inspired by that. And it's just kind of weird because it's like, why do we still say it like that, but everyone still understands it, kind of thing.
Well, I mean, it's a saying that's been passed down forever. And is it the most accurate statement ever? No, but most things aren't.
Yes.
It's just kind of how it goes.
This is something I always kind of struggled with, where it's like, yes, things are kind of gender specific, but at the core of them, they're gender neutral. Like, for example, I remember at ISU, we were putting on the show, what was that show called? The one about Elizabeth Banks and Mr. Dudley?
Elizabeth Banks, the actress?
No.
I must have not gone to this show.
No. It's Pride and Prejudice.
Oh,
Pride and Prejudice. That's the name of the show.
You weren't in that, were you?
No, I wasn't, but I went to go see it.
I tried to read the book. Shit did not age well.
It did, but it's amazing. Okay, so here's the thing. The play and the show and the book and the movie, it's all super girly. I tried to read the book. I made it halfway through, and I liked it, but it honestly felt like a bunch of girls sitting around having tea and gossiping. That's what the book felt like.
That's how the first chapter is, and I was like, oh, man.
Exactly.
I have trouble with old English.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not even that old, but...
I don't have trouble with it, but it did feel very much like gossip around some scones. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it wasn't for me. But the thing is that at the end of the play, or at least the play I saw, at the end of the story, the mother of the guy that the main character is into is like, listen, you're not going to marry him. You're going to walk away, and you're going to just go live a happy little life, and you're going to leave us the hell alone. And the girl was like, listen, you don't get to tell me how I live my life. Just go away, and I'm going to do what I want to do. And it was super inspiring. And the thing is that it is a girly play. It is played up as a girl play, and girls are very inspired by it. The main characters one of the biggest symbols of like feminism and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's like that idea of saying, no, I'm going to do what I want is such a universal idea of like standing up for what you want, standing up for what you believe in, standing up for what you think is best for you and not what everyone else says to you. That's such a universal thing, and that's super inspiring for everybody. But at the same time, you have to get past like all that girly stuff to do that.
Yeah.
That's something I always had a trouble with, because I saw it with a girl and she's like, she's such like she stands up for all the girls in the room. I'm like, she's standing up for everybody. You know, it's like, how can we get past that? But at the same time, should we get past that? I really don't know.
You see, my argument of why we shouldn't get past it is because, especially in that time period, it meant a hell of a lot more for a woman to stand up and say, "Nah, these are my rules for life, and you're gonna have to abide by them." And we have so many stories of guys already doing that because it's always been socially acceptable for guys to, stand up for themselves. So, like, I think that's important. It also, like, whenever, generally, if I play like Dark Souls or Bloodborne, I usually make a female character because there's something about it. How many big burly dudes like Beowulf do we have and stories do we have? But then you got like a woman beating up all these big beasts. Like, it's just cooler for some reason.
Yeah, I made a character, Monster Hunter, I'm not going to lie. That's like my imagination of as girly as possible. Like twin pigtails, pink hair, pink face, everything, like round face, everything. And she carries around like the biggest weapons and carries the biggest armor because I thought it was kind of a funny juxtaposition. And she is a great character. I really like playing as her. But yeah, it's just kind of... At some point, you kind of have to ask, like, is this a specific message for the gender, or is this a universal thing? And I think if the message is strong enough, it's a universal thing. Like, we talked about Hunger Games a little bit. I would say Hunger Games is more of a universal message than it is a gender-specific message. Yeah. Though most people will put it out as a gender-specific message because you have the girl as the action hero. But at the same time, it's like she's standing up for what she thinks. She's standing up against an over-imposing enemy. That's something everyone can kind of get behind. Though, like you said, maybe I'm just oversaturated with it because I'm a man and I get to see myself do that all the time. And maybe this is the girl's turn and I'm just being callous.
Yeah, you get to see guys kick ass all the time across history in written works. But I'm going to make an argument. And let's see if I can get this out.
Right.
So by having...
I'm struggling too, man. It's fine.
Having a woman do it, and the argument is that these are just good human values that we should have. Maybe having a woman do it further sells the human value of it because it's a disenfranchised person, a person who's had their voice taken away, like in Pride and Prejudice. Like I said, in that time period, women didn't really have much of a voice.
Right.
So it's someone that despite being silent, she still makes noise. And maybe that means more to me and you as men than anything else. Because someday, no matter how white or how male we are, we're going to feel silenced. And we're going to have to speak up maybe for ourselves or on behalf of others.
I think.
And it means something more if we can look at her standing up than if it was her boyfriend who's like, fuck you, I'm going to marry this woman. It's more of a lesson to us as well.
I suppose. I don't know. It's like what I said earlier is like, even though I'm white and I am a man, when it comes to like theater groups, or at least in college, I felt very uncomfortable expressing some of the things I thought, even though I felt very strongly for what I thought. I remember one time this girl I was sitting next to just went on a tangent about how horrible Abraham Lincoln was. Due to her reasoning was, I thought, very unfair. And I didn't say anything. I didn't oppose her, but I did write down everything she said because I was like, this is important. And I want to make sure I know exactly what you said just so I can look it up and find out how I exactly feel about it.
Keep talking, honey. This is going to my Tumblr.
It's amazing because actually I thought it was... I was uncomfortable because I was like, listen, everything you just said was wrong. But by writing it all down and having her repeat it, she got super uncomfortable too. She was like repeating it and being like, well, why are you writing this down? I was like, because I want to remember it.
Did you cross-examine her?
No. I didn't. I just wrote down what she said And I took it, and over lunch I looked through it. I read some things people said, and I created my own opinion about it. And my opinion is that she's horribly, dumbly wrong. Mm-hmm. But I didn't say that. I just wrote down what she said, and it actually made her uncomfortable. But, like, the idea of standing up for yourself, that's something everyone kind of relates to. Is like everyone's been in that position where they felt like they can't share what they think. They can't express everything that they want to do. And it's a scary thing to go through. But I think people should learn to power through it. I've kind of lost my main point because I was talking about the Abraham Lincoln story. Yeah. So I don't know, man. It's crazy stuff. I don't know if we're in a position to really solve the problem, I should say.
No, nobody is, though.
But it's one of those things where maybe people should stop trying to be butthurt about it and trying to, like, see what the other person's going through, you know, find some empathy. And maybe we'll probably be less butthurt.
Probably. Now, I got a proposition.
Okay.
First, let's take another shot.
Okay.
It's third shot.
God damn. I mean, gosh darn. Cheers.
Get damn it.
To yeah.
Okay.
I feel like my mouth's watering.
Yeah, right. Well, here's the proposition.
All right, everyone listening along to this, or reading along to this. I don't know how you watch podcasts.
If you have the closed captioning on.
If you're watching this, reading this, and listening to this, that was 3 shots, if you're playing along, of Jack Daniels. I hope you feel as good as we do.
And to be clear, this is for the people. So it's just it's regular Jack Daniels. It's not Gentleman's Jack. We can all afford this. It's not the Sinatra Select, although we are drinking out of I thought we were drinking out of the Sinatra glasses.
We are the heroes of the people.
The people.
This is for you. It's not for me or my heart.
All right, so here's my proposition. Okay. You want to go play Bloodborne?
Hell yeah. I'm at the Gale.
The Gale. I think, isn't it pronounced jail?
I have no idea.
Isn't that like Old English for jail?
Gaol.
Look it up, and you can email us the answer at
Babbling Barroom @gmail.com.
Boom.